and Councillor Chambers. We haven't heard that he's not going to be here, but he's not here as yet. So we will move forward. Anybody have anything to add to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, can I get an approval of the agenda? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Miller, any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. If you have any, please do so now or at the time. Anything at this point? Okay, we'll move on then. Delegations. We do have a delegation this evening from Bob Matisse. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, and Carol Richards regarding, regarding the new development lot charge. So is it just yourself, Bob, or is Carol?
Yeah, just myself tonight. Yep.
Okay. When you're ready, go ahead. Just a reminder, you have 10 minutes to do your presentation, and then we have a question period after that. So the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks for coming tonight anyways. Myself, Bob Matisse, and on behalf of Carol Richards, we purchased this country lot, number 19, Highway 53, back in November 2019. It's a 1.5 acre lot, which it had an old house and a barn on it until 2013. And this old house and barn were both demolished and trucked away. The Burford Fire Department, they came and burnt the house down, and the foundation was also trucked away. When I went to pay for the building permit, there was a charge for a new developed lot in the amount of $18,367. I found out that I needed to obtain a building permit within 5 years after it was destroyed, which would have been 2019. For this fee to be waived, I would have had to get a building permit before 2019. Never I would have purchased the lot if I would have known of this development fee. The cost of demolishing the house and hiring Burford Fire Department was of course added into the price of the lot, which I paid for. I just feel that I'm being charged twice for this charge. I paid for it when we paid for the lot, and now I'm paying for it again. I just feel that the county is encouraging people to leave up old houses and barns to save us from paying this fee, which none of us want old houses and barns left on the side of the road, do we? They're an eyesore in the country. And also there's no natural gas at this lot. There's no water. There's no sewer system, which we all have to supply for the lot. What I'm asking for is the lot to be exempt from this charge or fee, and the amount of $18,367 be refunded. I understand we missed the time frame by 1 year, and because of COVID, it has been delayed for another year to 1.5 years actually. And I would not be here because of COVID asking for this money back. The house would have been built in a timely fashion, and there would have been no problem. And I think that's about all I got. If you guys want to discuss it.
Thanks for that, Bob. Any questions for the delegation? Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Matisse. Bob, you mentioned that you paid for the fire department when you purchased the lot. Did you buy the lot from the township of Burford, or did you buy it from a private individual?
No, I bought this private from an individual off of Remax. And I know the fella very well that I bought it off of. And of course, when they demolished the house and the barn and trucked everything away, that charge was added into the price of the lot. Like anybody would add that charge on the lot, you know what I mean?
The tipping fees for the landfill.
Sure, yeah. There's dump trucks to pay for. You got to pay for the fire department.
And they used it for fire practice, probably.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I wasn't around then. It was 2013 when they did it, but.
Okay, thank you. You've answered my question.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Counselor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a motion later on, but I would like to ask Bob. Bob, as far as the development charge, yeah, I think you got some information from staff about that 5 years and all that stuff. Just to be clear, though, you're not disputing the amount of the development charges, like
No,
and what they go towards and all that stuff, correct?
no, I'm not disputing that.
Okay. And I appreciate what you said about if it's a 5-year window, the motivation, I guess, for people would be to just leave the old things there until somebody
Right.
comes along, because then we're saving ourselves they would save themselves a wheelbarrow full of a development charge. And to me, that makes sense. So
Yeah,
I appreciate that comment.
And I don't think anybody wants to see old houses, old barns left on the side of the road, do we?
Yeah.
And the owners did the right thing by tearing it down and making the country look good.
Okay.
Okay.
No, that's the only question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for the delegation? Counselor Gatwood for a second time?
Thank you. I forgot to ask this. There's already an entrance for this lot and a current culvert under the entrance.
Yes, there is.
So you don't need an entrance permit or
Nope.
no county services other than your building permit, because
Right.
you're supplying your own water, your own septic.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, Counselor Miller, I'll go back to you. You have a motion?
Well, I do, Mr. Chair. There's a few things staff have been looking into this, but there's a few questions outstanding. One was the building taken down somewhere, but it was a generalized period between 2010, 2013. At the same time, I do like Mr. Matisse's ideas or thoughts on, this 5-year time frame. So what I'd like to do is just refer it back to staff. Maybe they could put together a small report with all the facts and give us some options, and maybe talk a little bit about where that 5-year time frame came from. Because to me, I don't know if that's provincial regulation or is that a municipal regulation. Is that something maybe we should be looking at? But I'm looking for a seconder to ask for a staff report on the whole matter.
Seconder by Mayor Bailey. Okay, just before we get into any questions, just know Counselor Chambers has arrived. Thank you. Welcome. Any questions on that motion? Counselor Chambers.
I'm just wondering if we could put a time frame on that, Mr. Chairman. One cycle, perhaps?
I think that might be a fair statement, because we do not have, just a reminder, we do not have a meeting in August. So the next cycle would actually be in September, which should give staff enough time. So to the mover, are you good with adding that? Okay, seconder is good with it as well. So we're adding a 1 cycle time frame on that. Thank you, Counselor Chambers. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That motion is passed. Okay, so Bob, you understand that it's going to go back to staff for a report as to the timelines on this, and it will be back for it will actually be the September meeting that this will come back for.
Okay, no, I understand.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's it for our delegations this evening. So we will move on to section 5, the adoption of the previous minutes from the June 15th. Can I get a mover, please? Counselor Bell, Counselor Howes, any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Is there any business arising from those previous minutes? Seeing none, we will move on to section 7. Consent items to be approved. We have 7.1.1, which is RPT-21-177 for the Hartley Avenue Park tender. Kathy Ballantyne, I'm not sure if you want to speak to that or if you just want to answer questions on it.
I can just answer questions, John. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Kathy on the report? We'll go Counselor Gatward, then Howes, then Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For you to Kathy, the paving company that you selected, have you checked references on other parks they have done?
Yes, I have. Came back favorably.
It came back favorably. Thank you.
Okay, that's all, Counselor Gatward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Kathy. We've heard a lot about the construction industry being faced with a number of delays and in some cases supply shortages and supply delays. Can you speak a little bit to the anticipated timing of the execution of this project, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor House. The contractor has alluded that he would be able to start this project in August. So we're hopeful to get things rolling as soon as the final approvals are done and all the agreements are signed next week if this goes forward.
Just follow up, Mr. Chair.
Certainly.
And anticipated completion?
They're telling me the end of sometime in September, so I'm not sure exactly how many weeks, but they don't think it'll take too many weeks. Probably about 3-week job to get most of the work done.
That'll be great news for the folks at the north end. Thank you.
Absolutely. Counselor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Kathy. Kathy, you mentioned in the report that the bulk of the monies for this is coming from development charges. When a developer builds something and they don't actually put a park in, we ask for 5% in lieu of or cash. Is that part of the money that's called development charges, or is that on top of? Are we using money from that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the cash in lieu fund goes into a separate reserve fund that we often use for other projects. Some are smaller projects and some are held in reserves for larger projects, but it's not included in the development charges. That's a separate fund for that.
Okay, so my follow-up question then, Mr. Chair, would be, would you be tapping into that fund to help with this one?
No, it comes all from development charges for this project. The regulations allow us to take all of the funds from that as of September.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Muted, John, you're muted.
Councillor Pierce, you're muted.
Sorry about that, folks. I'm the one that's muted. I'm asking Counselor Wheat if he's muted. Sorry about that. Counselor Wheat, go ahead.
I'm moving the recommendation.
Okay, we got one more. We'll go to Counselor Bell here, and then we'll hook back to that. I think it's already moved and seconded anyway.
Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Kathy. I don't see any reference to the actual playground equipment. Is that included in this budget item?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the playground was actually purchased the year prior and has been in storage, so it will be installed. I'm just trying to coordinate that with the installer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now that I'm not on mute, any other questions? Seeing none, we have it moved and seconded. No further questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you for that. Moving on, we will go to 7.1.2, which is RPT-21-183 for the Rest Acres Road Landscaping Award. There is a recommendation. Can I get a mover, please? Counselor Wheat, Counselor Bell. Any questions on the recommendation? We'll go Counselor Gatward and then Counselor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For you to, I don't know if Joe is on the report or who from
I see
Operation.
General Manager Walton here. He might be able to help us out.
Okay. The background paragraph of the report states that they're going to have further enhancement with river rock and proposed metal fish sculptures. I was surprised to read that. What type of metal fish sculptures are they? Because I'm wondering if the road salt that will be liberally applied out there, I'm sure, on this roadway, will eat these fish up in no time. I'm not sure that that's a necessary feature to put in our boulevards. And I can just hear people saying, well, we've got fish, but we still have our gravel road. So I'm not in favor of fish. That's just, and I'd like to know what they're made out of, please.
Mr. Walton, you respond to that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll have to confirm that with Joe Murphy, staff that has been in charge of this project. I imagine it is corrosion-resistant material that is in these, and this all was designed by a landscape architect with a theme in mind for the whole corridor. So I don't think it's probably the time to start changing the design at this point in time.
Oh, well, if I could ask a follow-up then, if there's a theme, what other, is it a nautical or a river theme to go with our Simply Grand logo, or, and what other sculptures are planned?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Gatward. These are the only sculptures which are proposed along here, but there also is benches and then plantings of trees and the decorative grasses and like which are mentioned in here as in shrubs as well.
Yeah, I saw those, and which doesn't, those are just normal features along a road sometimes. And I don't know, I'd like to see the fish taken out. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but that's my opinion.
And that you're entitled to that, Councillor Gatward. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe through to Mr. Walton. This tender, it's just for this year, for the installation, for the plantings. And I guess what I'm getting at is shrubs and trees tend to need a couple, 2-3 years to get going, some babying once in a while, some watering, probably if it's a dry year. And if it's not done through the tender, my question would be, who would look after this? Would this be a roads project, like operational at that point?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Miller. This project does have a 2-year maintenance with it. In fact, this contractor will be cutting the grass, which we actually just cut recently. They will be cutting the grass once they are put in on this project. So they are taking care of this for 2 years.
Okay, that's not a bad idea then. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I have a quick question. When it talks about the project includes the planting of trees and shrubs along Rest Acres Road corridor, roundabouts, and the intersection of Rest Acres and King Edward, is this the entire Rest Acres Road corridor or just for the roundabouts that are already created?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to yourself. This is for the ones that are from Power Line North to King Edward. It won't include the ones to the south.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, last chance for questions on this. Seeing none, we do have a motion that's seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to 7.1.3, RPT-21-195 for the community improvement application for 112 King Street. Can I get a mover for that, please? Mayor Bailey, second. Councilor Ferrier. Any questions on that recommendation? I'm not seeing any questions. We do have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to 7.1.4, which is RPT 21-196 for the Asset Management Software Award. There is a recommendation there. Can I get a mover? Councilor Ferrier? Councilor Howes? Any questions on this report? Councilor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Walton. Will everyone in your department be able to use this to keep track of all the things that are mentioned on page 2?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilor Gatward. Yes, actually, this software which is being proposed will be used by the entire organization for all of our assets. So there'll be people from all departments which will use this. I don't believe that everyone in our department will be using it, but a good percentage of them will. And it's certainly going to be a big team effort to put this in place to get everything in there. At the same time that we're doing this, we actually are working on the actual asset management plan, which will take the information we already have in GIS and other formats and translate the modeling for that into this software. It's actually the delay that we've got from the province in having the asset management in place till next July 1st is a good thing. And we're actually going to work ahead on the non-core assets to try and have them done it way ahead of their deadline, but work on them sort of all at the same time, with obviously the goal of having the core assets of water, wastewater, roads, storm and stormwater management all done by July 1st next year.
Okay, the reason I asked that, because number 2 says work order management. When I saw that, I thought, okay, they issue a work order to go out and do something to a road somewhere, like clean out the ditches or whatever. That's what I was thinking of, but obviously that's not what work order management.
That is what it is. It certainly is. That is part of the work order management. The software will issue work orders, and we will use it in other ways to issue work orders as well. And that'll all be tied in with the financing software. So it's going to be a real step forward for us.
So will it involve counselors? Or we just still give our requests to your department when something needs doing?
No, the actual working on the work orders will be staff that does that. There'll be a process of how we get things into the work orders, which staff will take care of.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand now.
Councilor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rob. Rob, PSD Citywide Inc., what do we know about them? Have they done this kind of work in other local municipalities?
Yes, and I actually should, I believe James Rickard is on the call here tonight. He's the one that probably should answer those questions because he was more intimately involved in the selection team than I was. But this company does do this in a great number of municipalities and has been around for some period of time. In a previous employer that I worked for and we were doing asset management there, was certainly one of the ones that we considered at the time, probably about 7, 8 years ago. So James, coming to my rescue here, you're the one that really can answer this.
James, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. PSD Citywide is a very well-known asset management solution with all municipalities, with many municipalities across Canada and some in the US. PSD Citywide is one of PSD's products. We do have other PSD products here that are for finance solutions, so we can tie in with our finance solution because they are very similar and they're from the same company. PSD is a very largely used product. We have checked, I think, 6 other municipalities for references, and they all came back favorably. So,
Thank you. Great answer.
Any other questions on this report? Seeing none, it is moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. So we're going to move on to 7.1.5, which is RPT 21-206, which is parking bylaw amendments, Schedule 14. Mr. Bergeron, are you with us this evening? I'm not sure if you want to speak to it or if somebody's going to speak to it or just to have questions. Jyoti?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bergeron's actually on some well-deserved holidays right now,
Nice.
so I can answer questions if you'd like.
Okay. Any questions about this report? Councillor House?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Jyoti. Just a quick one, and on the second page of the report, the first sentence says that the recently implemented permit parking scheme for the river access zones appears to have achieved the desired effect. And I was hoping that Greg or someone from bylaw might give us just a little bit more color commentary on how that's been going. And I will understand if that's not your area of expertise necessarily.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, you're right, it's not. I would think that when Greg says something like that, he's indicating that the scheme that council wanted to implement seems to be rolling out as you would want it. It's there's probably a couple of little glitches along the way, but that he's managing those. So that's when I see that type of language, I would think that that's what he's driving at, that it's working out to what council had wanted to see happen, and it will roll out as you would like to see happen as you go forward.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Faria?
Maybe more of a comment than a question, but I just appreciate that this is an example of something we had said when we had voted on this, that we would keep working on it, keep fine tuning it, keep tweaking based on community feedback. And maybe this is a question. It's my understanding a lot of this came from community feedback. I know personally, I know Councillor House and I have received calls about these very things, and within a cycle, they're being implemented to this, hopefully the satisfaction of residents. So we're going to keep doing that, is my understanding as well, over the next year, and then have a report at the end, correct?
Yep, that's my understanding as well, Councillor. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, through you, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. I think that is the case. There was a lot of feedback. I know Greg was intimately involved in getting those comments and implementing the suggestions that were being made. So I think you're correct in your understanding.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I have a quick one here, and it's on recommendation number 3 for 1.7. It says for guest a valid municipal permit parking pass. I'm just wondering, for the guest parking passes, it's kind of twofold. First part of it is, how many can a household get? And second part of it is it a time frame? Like, is it, from this date to this date, or is a household able to request a visitor's parking pass that they would have permanently like their own?
So through you, or for you, Mr. Chairman, I don't know the specific answer to the time frame, so I can certainly find out and get back to you on that one. With respect to the number, I would think that that's captured through the gathering restrictions with COVID, and now that we've moved into step 3, there's more flexibility there with the number of people that can be visiting. So that's been a bit of a moving target. But with respect to the time frame, I can get back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you could, because I think that's key, in the sense that one of the statements that's been said to me is the fact all a household has to do is get 2 or 3 of the guest permits, and all of a sudden they have 5. So I'm sure that Greg has looked into that and taken care of that, but I'd be just curious to know, is there a time frame on that? Thank you. Okay, no further questions. We do have it moved and seconded. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Okay, that is carried. Moving on to consent items to be received. I see two of them there. Is somebody willing to move them both to be received? Councillor Ferrier and Councillor Gatward. Any questions on either of them? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is passed. We will move on to section 8, which is staff recommendations, staff reports. 8.1 is RPT-21-193 for an insurance renewal. There is a recommendation there. Can I get a mover? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Gatward. Any questions on that report? Councillor Gatward.
It's not really a question, Mr. Chairman. It's a comment, and I was dismayed when I saw the amount of the increase. But when I turned the page and saw what other municipalities are paying for increase, I think we must be doing well with our risk management and our insurer, because we had the lowest increase percentage-wise of all. So I was pleased to see that. That made me feel better about this large expenditure and increase. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else with questions? Councillor Miller.
I don't know who to ask, Mr. Chair, but I know we've made delegations at AMO and whatnot over in the past over joint and several liability. I believe that's how you say it. And I'm just wondering, is anybody aware of any rumblings at all that it's being looked at or maybe changed or anything? Because I know when the Tories or the Conservatives first came in, that they mentioned they would look at it, but I've not heard boo since. So I'm just wondering if anybody anywhere knows if anything's going on with that, or are we stuck with this for the foreseeable future?
Is there anybody on that can comment to that? Councillor Gatward, are you commenting to that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I heard a comment about this from the large urban city mayors, and they had met with the provincial government about various matters. And it was reported at one of our GRCA meetings that the province is not going to consider any action on joint and several liability.
Okay.
So-
Michael, I see you're coming in here. Are you wanting to add something to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you just give me a thumbs up that you can hear me? Thank you.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, I can, and consistent with what Councillor Gatward heard, I've heard the same thing, that the province had made a commitment to look at joint and several liability, and have said that they're not going to be making any changes. But it is still active lobbying topic for most of the municipal associations at this point that I'm aware of.
Okay. Councillor Miller, it's good with you?
Yeah, I appreciate the answer. Maybe, well, certainly not in this term of council, but maybe next term of council, they get another delegation together and maybe work with other municipalities, because we know other jurisdictions certainly don't have this, and it does add to that heavy liability insurance we pay. So I appreciate the answers to Michael and Councillor Gatward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions on this recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Recommendation is carried. Okay, we will move on to 8.2, which is RPT-21-199, proposal for speed limit reductions. We do have a recommendation there. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Bell? Councillor McAlpine? Okay, Councillor Bell and Councillor McAlpine. Any questions on that recommendation? Councillor Chambers, then Howes, then Gatward.
Mr. Chairman, with regard to the Bishopsgate recommendation, the recommendation is to lower it from 80 to 60. I'm wondering if there was any consideration to lowering it to 50 and an approach decrease of 60 to the 50, from 80 to 60 to 50, if that was considered when the investigation was done.
General Manager Walton.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Chambers. The staff that looked at this would have looked at the TAC recommendations for the speed limits in any particular zone. What actually happens there? There really are very few houses or entrances which come on to Bishopsgate there. So it wouldn't meet the criteria for 50 is what the reality of it is. So they would have looked at that. That's what they would have looked at to come up with the 60. It actually would meet 80 really, but we definitely need to get the transition here to get people slowing down for the intersection if at all possible. And we certainly know that the grades that happen through the intersection make it so you don't want to be traveling very fast through there.
True enough. Councillor Chambers, follow up?
Yeah, just to follow up, I'm wondering if that is the case, and I understand that because the driveways do, most of them go on to the side streets that enter onto Bishopsgate. I'm wondering if consideration could be given, and this is a request from some of the residents, not my request, but from the residents, that a truck braking sign be placed, since they are reducing their speed right at the point where the houses begin on each side of this King Street. So I'll leave that with staff, and I'll put forward a request and support the request from the residents that a truck braking, I can't think of the wording right now, but you know what I mean, be installed
Jake break.
contiguous with the speed limit reduction.
So that'll be noted by General Manager Walton there. That's fine. That's good. Councillor Chambers?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor House?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rob, I think. So when other residents of other parts of the county hear about this, read about this, I anticipate that we will get some questions regarding, how do we apply or where do we lobby to have other roads reduced that might be needed? Is the answer to that to direct people towards the Brant Safe Streets portion of the county website, or if asked, is there some other route that we should be pointing people towards?
Through the chair to Councillor House, that's absolutely right, and people probably think that we're a bit slow to getting some of these, but I think we have 70 requests sitting in front of us right now. Now, 70 requests, some of them are duplicated in particular areas, that's for sure. So, and we certainly have a number. I know that Councillor Chambers was helpful in getting this one in front of us, and Councillor Miller, I believe they both saw this one and directed it through the Brant Safe Streets. I don't think this one actually took that long to get implemented. It happened to be on the line. We probably had requests from the residents in advance of that as well. So. So we look at all of the data where we get, a whole bunch of requests from an area. We certainly look at that to see whether there's some reason why that should be sped up because of the number of requests. And I'm not sure when the number 70 is going to come down, but we keep hitting away at a few of them and getting them off of there, and we're doing our best to reduce it.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gatward and then Councillor Laferriere.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Walton. Yes, the Bishopsgate Road traffic signals. I 110% agree with further signal timing revisions, which is on the last paragraph of page 60 of the report, or page 2 of 4. I have sat at that light, and you wonder if it's ever going to change. It's really when you're heading north and you're stopped at the red, it takes forever for it to get to finally to a green. And then if you're turning left, you have to still wait for the oncoming traffic. I know one day I didn't even get through on the light. I had to wait for a second light. So I definitely agree with the timing of looking at those lights, because I can understand why motorists, it says, are cutting through on Elizabeth Avenue because they don't want to wait as long as it takes for that light. And the other thing, Councillor Chambers requested the no engine brake signs. Did he mean that for Bishopsgate? Because he said King, and it's being lowered on Bishopsgate.
Councilor, or General Manager Walton, did you want to respond to that? Anything on that?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Gatward. My understanding was that the request from Councillor Chambers was for Bishopsgate,
Yeah.
where the speed reduction was.
Right.
We're also looking at, there definitely are some problems at this intersection, and a lot of them are geometrically induced, right? We can't have the both phases of this light on Bishopsgate at the same time because of the way that it's aligned and the grade change there. So so we've got things against us to make it efficient. If we could get a little bit of improvements and get some right turn lanes there, it certainly would improve it a lot. And we're certainly looking at the potential of doing that sooner than later. But that's going to require some capital money, and we have to. But we are definitely looking at that. Right-hand turn lanes on both those would improve it a lot. But the big change to this intersection would cost a small fortune. And I'm not sure anybody would like that either, because it would definitely require property on all four corners.
Okay, thank you for that. I got Councilor Ferrier and then Councilor Wheat.
Thank you. I think Councillor Chambers wanted to interject directly to Councillor Gatward, though, about a question to her.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Thanks, Mark, for letting me jump in. I just wanted to clarify. I think what I said was Bishopsgate as it approaches King. I certainly didn't mean on King Street.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry about that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Go ahead.
Yeah, just, I think this is great. I understand the need for continuity around some of the speed reductions with neighboring communities. I think speed reductions in general tend to make a lot of sense. With that 70 request backlog, that speaks to the success of Safe Streets, sometimes maybe in a way too much success on the input side. But I was wondering if we could maybe get a public-facing document or a public-facing report that takes all of the things like today's actions and others and tells the public, kind of gives the public an update on how many requests we get, but also the successes to this point, and then maybe yearly thereafter, or something to add to that Safe Streets webpage where it's the requests, the how we formed it, but also the continuing good works of it, because that public buy-in for Safe Streets is good, but I think we have to toot the horn a little, a bad metaphor, but we have to toot the horn a little bit more on the successes of Safe Streets, if that makes sense. Is that possible?
Mr. Walton?
Here, Mr. Chair, to Councilor Ferrier. I believe that staff have committed to bring back a sort of an overall report on the success of Brant Safe Streets and the status of it in the fall, probably October, November. I believe we've committed to that, and that's on our report agenda on the ones that I'm working on. So.
Okay, well, maybe just a heads up to communication staff. I'll probably request, and hopefully some other folks will, a public-facing document or a public, beyond a report, something that's a little more consumable for the public to communicate those successes and statuses. Just a heads up then. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Councilor Wheat, and then Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rob Walton. Don't worry about changing the stoplights there at Bishopsgate to make people get through quicker. They're designed for safety. Safety is a priority in the county of Brant. And I think that's a terrific lighting system at Bishopsgate and 53. Very well done.
Thank you for that, Councilor. Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just sorry to dive into the weeds here, but really quickly, since we're talking about that intersection anyways, my understanding through to Rob is that the sensor for cars coming southbound is busted. It's been busted since last fall. That's my understanding. And second of all, there does need to be some line painting as well, because there is only one lane going northbound that turns left or goes straight. And unfortunately, when somebody's got a left turn signal on and somebody else is going straight, they tend to get to the right lane only to find out that lane doesn't go through. So there's been been a few near misses on that one. So this intersection, yeah, it could use a little bit of work. It's not the best intersection in the county. So I'll leave that with you. I don't need your response, but those are some of the things I've been trying to chase down as well.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, just a quick comment myself, and it kind of alludes back to what Councilor Ferrier was saying. The big one I see on here is the King Edward Street. That's a huge win. I've had a lot of calls on that particular area, and I think it's a fantastic idea putting the 50 kilometers back out to Cleaver Road, which is it's really going to slow things down. Again, there's going to be my understanding there may be a crossing guard with kids crossing over to Iron Gate once school starts back in. So I think slowing things down coming into town is a fantastic idea. So I'm glad that one was resolved this time. So thank you for that. Okay, we do have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. No further questions. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That is it for section 8. Moving on to section 9, communications. City of Brantford Memorial Installation of honor in honor of the children residential schools. Can I get a mover to receive that? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Howes, any questions on that communication? Councillor Miller.
Well, I believe the request they were looking for an answer on one of their requests. So I'm not sure how the committee wants to deal with it. I mean, I was actually hoping to have more information on what exactly they were looking for. It's part of their education and awareness month, I believe, is what they're looking for. And I don't know what that would involve, what that would entail, what it would look like. Anyways, that's what I read.
Comments on that? Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would hope if they wanted to collaborate with the county, that they would be in touch with us and give us the information that Councillor Miller just mentioned, because it doesn't really explain it very well. However, I recall Councillor Laferriere mentioning at an earlier meeting to do with the discussion on the library about having some Indigenous classes in the new library.
Point of order.
And
Councillor Ferrier?
Yeah,
I think
I don't believe that's to be discussed in this venue.
that would be the same education type of, they're talking about education. So that's a segment of education. If I understood Councillor Laferriere's intent correctly, but yeah, I'm in favor of receiving, and hopefully we'll get more information from the city.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Recommendation is carried. Moving on to number 10, nobody made anything aware of other business. Does anybody have any other business? Seeing none, we will move on to in camera. Can I get a motion to go in camera? Councillor Week, Councillor Howes. So we will just give a minute here. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We will be heading in camera here. Okay, I think we have everybody back now and we are recording again. So the next item on the agenda is for the next meeting, which I believe will be in the September cycle because we do not have meetings in August. Other than that, is there anything else anybody needs to discuss at this point in time? If not, motion to adjourn. I can do that myself and I shall.